We're ready to roll. Well, good afternoon everyone and welcome to the May 2024 Ordinary Council meeting. This is live and on the internet, on YouTube, and also will be recorded, and on that point I'll hand to the CEO to read out a statement.
All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however audio from the entire room is captured. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is to hold us more accountable and to improve transparency of council's decision making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Noting it's National Reconciliation Week and this year's theme is Now More Than Ever, I would ask everyone to stand for the acknowledgement of traditional custodians and recognition of all people. Alpine Shire acknowledges the Taungurung peoples as the traditional custodians of the lands of which we're meeting today. Council also acknowledges the traditional custodians of all the wider lands of the area known as the Alpine Shire. We'll also acknowledge today those people who've contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make decisions, wise decisions, that will improve the quality of life for all. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda tonight is the confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover of that recommendation, a seconder? Move Councillor Prime, second Councillor Nicholas. Thank you. Can I see a show of hands for carrying that motion? That's unanimous. Thank you. Just a technology check on Councillor Keeble there. I think we've got a frozen screen. Councillor Keeble, can you still hear us on the microphone?
I can hear you, and I've got my hand up.
Terrific. Thanks for confirming that. Item 4 on the agenda is apologies, and I'll firstly state the obvious tonight, and that is that Councillor John Forsyth, our Mayor, is an apology. Otherwise, we have a suite of 6 councillors with 2 online tonight. Item 5, obituaries and congratulations, and I'll start on my right with Councillor Janus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, tonight. It might be easier. I'd just like to congratulate the organisers and participants, volunteers for the La Fiera Festival that was held in Myrtleford last weekend. Thousands of people, and interestingly, a younger demographic of people attending. So that was lovely to see, and thank you to the Alpine Shire staff for providing FOGO bins this year, and I think they worked very well, being one of the bin monitors. I think hopefully they'll be used at other events and festivals throughout the Shire. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Prime.
None from me.
I'll hand over electronically to Councillor Hughes.
No, nothing from me, thank you.
Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Kelly, Acting Mayor Kelly. Wanted to shout out to the Mount Beauty Op Shop that had their 10-year anniversary recently, and the amount of money that they have raised in a short period of time for the Mount Beauty Hospital. It's extraordinary. We have an amazing group of people who work hard and tirelessly, and all their funds go towards the hospital there. So just a big shout out for them for their 10-year anniversary. Well done.
Terrific. Thanks, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas.
Yes, and a great op shop that is. I wanted to congratulate the Harrietville CFA for recognising the terrific efforts of their members and doing what they do. Special congratulations to Gary Weston for a life membership of the Harrietville Brigade as well as the CFA in general for his long-term service and above and beyond contribution. And knowing Gary's work ethic from working with him over the years at Mount Hotham, the award is well deserved. I'd also like to congratulate the organisers of Pineapple Express for doing their very best, working with VicPol to curb the completely unacceptable behaviour that some of the entrants in the competition exhibited in our town. And I am told that those people were from out of town. And hopefully there'll be some further work into the future for that event. My third thing is to thank those who stepped up to support businesses and helped to run events and markets and stuff over our very busy time. So some people who stepped up were paid and some people volunteers, but it just really helps to keep the places operating. I know of a number of people who've come out of retirement to do things like wash dishes in a cafe or a restaurant because there aren't enough staff otherwise. So thanks to everyone who helped make that busy time work.
Terrific. Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. And just from my corner, congratulations to the Tony and Renata and all the volunteers for the Bright Biggest Morning Tea last week, close to $5,000 raised, including the contribution of the Lions ladies there, which I believe is their final contribution as they'll be discontinuing going forward. And secondly, the Autumn Festival concluded since the last meeting, and just to congratulate the committee and all the volunteers on that as well. I think it was incredibly well attended, particularly the gala day. Lots of visitors making the priority to attend that event, travelling to that, and terrific to have our local, state and federal members also present for the gala. So congratulations. Item 6 on the agenda is declarations by councillors of conflict of interest. Do I have any conflicts to declare? Take that as a no.
No.
On to item 7, public questions. We have the rules around our public question time are set out in the agenda, and we also have a number of questions received on notice tonight. We'll start with the questions on notice received. Noting, first up, the first question is from Mr. Bruce Hoare, and Mr. Hoare, I know you are in the audience tonight. Would you like to read your questions, or would you like me to do that for you? Terrific. So Mr. Hoare has written in regarding agenda item 822 tonight on the Bright Fishway report. Question 1 is, I was part of the working group and steering group. There was some period of time there where the committee was paused without explanation. Just to summarise, I'm looking for Council to please explain now what was discussed during meetings between NECMA and Council that were privately held without the steering committee, and what impact those discussions may have had on the Water Park precinct. I'll hand over to Mr. Rees for a response.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Bruce, for your question. During that time, NECMA briefed Council and Council officers on the outcome of the recent tender process, where it was advised that there is significant shortfall in funding to deliver the Bright Fish Passage project, and that there are no opportunities for alternative funding sources at this stage, despite efforts to source additional funding by both organisations.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. The second question from Mr. Hoare on the same subject matter. Could Council please advise if putting in place a fishway will be a mandatory part of any future master plan or development of the Water Park precinct? And if so, how do the Council plan to fund that work now that the $2.6 million from the Catchment Management Authority is no longer available? Thank you, Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So in October 2023, Council resolved to add the need to prepare a master plan for Houghton Centenary Parks to create a contemporary and high-value community precinct to Council's future work programme. And currently, Council officers are scoping this project, and it is expected that this master plan will include the area of the Ovens River that was identified to accommodate the Fish Passage project. During the pre-draft stage associated with preparing the master plan for the area, the views of all referral agencies and authorities, including NECMA, will be sought, and it is expected that NECMA will make a submission requesting that the future master plan include and identify the land needed to accommodate Fish Passage project. So subject to external funding, the master plan is expected to commence in 2024-25 financial year, and then once that's complete, external funding will be sourced to deliver the designs.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Rees. We have one final question or notice received outside of the cut-off time. However, it is quite relevant to the same topic of tonight's, or one of tonight's agenda items, and it's from the Upper Ovens Valley Landcare Group. So I'll just summarise some of the preamble before the question, which I think, Mr. Rees, you're best placed to respond to. The Upper Ovens Valley Landcare Group deems the Ovens Fishway project and Port Punker to be singularly the most important environmental repair projects in our region. And a little information here is the Ovens River can contribute up to 90% of the flows in the Murray River as it heads out towards sea in South Australia. And it is one of the only few unregulated rivers, certainly in Victoria and in the broader system. The desire for fishways on both the Bryde and Port Punker, will bring benefit to the aquatic species there. We're expecting around 10% of the dominant introduced species as trout to also benefit from that. So the question is, will the Alpine Shire Council continue to advocate strongly for the increased funding necessary to construct fishways at both weir sites in Bryde and Port Punker?
Thank you, Mayor. So NECMA, the North East Catchment Management Authority, is the lead agency seeking the realisation of both of these fish passages at Bryde and Port Punker, and council officers expect that these items will remain a high priority for NECMA. Council has previously provided support to work closely with NECMA for the realisation of Fish Passage, and at the Ordinary Council meeting held in June 2022, this was confirmed, and we are not expecting that to change. So Council will continue to work with NECMA and support their advocacy.
Thanks, Mr. Rees, and I think to put a little flavour on that myself, I'm satisfied NECMA sees this as a priority for our region. I think the funding opportunity, unfortunately, was very stapled and specific to Bryde in terms of a physical development, and that's the constraint that we're dealing with in terms of what's in the report tonight. We've got a number of folk in the gallery tonight that may wish to ask a question of council. There is a microphone on the lectern there. If I ask if you could just sort of state your name and what part of the Shire you're from. Ideally, questions are associated with the agenda items tonight. May not necessarily be the case, but we can work through that based on what your question might be. So I'll hand over. There's a question from the gallery. Did we receive a question or notice from a member of Mr. Hall's household? No, the answer is no. Anyone, a question on the microphone there? Thank you. Please join, stating your name and which part of the Shire you're from. Thank you.
It's better. My name's Ray Dyer, and I'm a resident of Buffalo River, born in Myrtleford. My main concern is, and I've spoken I think 4 times at this council meeting now, talking about leadership and communication. Not once has the council come and asked me why. Now I'll add one more to that, and that's accountability. And I'm talking way back, the flood mitigation. It flows backwards. There was no accountability on that whatsoever. When Ian Nichols, I think it was, did the football ground and you rebuilt the football ground, you were going to put a second story on, which I think you did, but the bottom floor wasn't to regulation, so you had to pull the whole thing to pieces. There's no accountability on that. The toilets, I've been speaking about the toilets for many years. When I was working on the Shires, I actually spoke about the toilets. And I've seen no accountability on that because the Mayor last month turned around and said to me, "We've met with you many a times, Ray." No, I was the one that instigated those meetings every time, not once from the Shire. And I was very happy when I spoke to Alan a while back because I said at Howard Park there at the barbecue facilities there with the toilets, one of the male toilets, the door, when it's open, you can see right from car park number 3, you can see right into the men's urinals with men standing there.
Thank you, Mr.
Now,
Dyer.
Alan, I believe the door was closed. Now it's open again.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer. Perhaps if you don't have a specific question...
Well, I'd like to know when you're going to be accountable, because I'll give you one reason too, is my electric bike. It was taken by the, I don't know who it was, the Shire, and the Paul Evans, the sergeant in Myrtleford at the time, said he didn't give the Shire permission to take the bike. But Len, I spoke to him over the phone going across Tawonga Gap, and he turned around and said to me the Shire gave him permission to take it, and I asked him twice for that. And then when I bring it up, Ron Janis was mayor at the time, and he turned around and says, "Take it up with the police." That's not accountability one bit. I'm still waiting on my bike.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer.
Is you going to look into it and see what's going to happen?
I think...
Otherwise, I'll go to the police and put in a charge of theft.
Thank you. Any other questions or preferably questions from the gallery tonight? No? Okay, terrific. Thank you. We'll move on to item 8 in the agenda, and that's presentations of reports by officers, and I'll hand to Mr. Will Jeremy, our CEO, for 8.1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Report 8.1.1 is contracts approved under delegation by the CEO, and this month I have nothing to report. There were no capital works contracts that were approved under my delegation.
And remind me, your delegation amount is?
$200,000.
Thank you. Item 1.2 on the agenda tonight is the councillor and staff interaction policy. It's one of many policies we'll be considering tonight, but this one is sitting with the CEO. So I'll hand to Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Local Government Act requires that the Chief Executive Officer is responsible for managing interactions between members of council, staff and councillors, and ensuring that policies, practices and protocols that support arrangements for interaction between members of council, staff and councillors are developed and implemented. So that's a responsibility that sits with me. In January 2023, the Local Government Inspectorate produced a report, and the report contained the following recommendation in relation to council relationships, and that was that councils are strongly encouraged to develop a policy to guide the relationships and the interactions between councillors and council staff. So, prompted by this recommendation and consideration of some of the circumstances that result in monitors being placed into councils around Victoria, we've prepared a councillor staff interaction policy. That policy has been adopted by council for the purposes of public exhibition. It's been out on public exhibition and we had no submissions from the public. And we're bringing it back to council tonight with a recommendation that that policy is adopted by council. There's a second recommendation, which is an administrative part of the process. So there's a table within the councillor staff interaction policy that if it remains in the body of the policy, it will require updating every time one of the positions within the organisation changes. So we've recommended there that we pull that, table has been pulled into the appendices, and we recommend that the CEO is given the delegation to be able to change that table when it's necessary because there's a change in staff position or recommendations. So the recommendation in front of council tonight are as noted in the report in front of you.
Thanks, Mr. Jeremy. Moved by Councillor Nicholas. I have a second. Thanks you, Councillor Prime.
So not only has this policy been out for public consultation, but it's been kicked around by councillors and staff for quite some number of months, and lots of questions asked and lots of changes made. So I guess where I come from is that governance of an organisation is largely achieved by having policies in place. So this is a policy that doesn't actually reflect on the current behaviour of councillors and staff, but it is a really good idea to have it in place because it's a backstop. It builds on the councillor code of conduct and is then a backstop in case there is a time and people who don't behave appropriately. So I put it forward for further discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Prime.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly. Sorry, I had to pause there for a second. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Nicholas. That's how I see it too currently, as a backstop. I feel like we've got quite a good group of councillors who have a good relationship with staff, and I wouldn't want anything to affect that. But at the end of the day, we need guidelines and things that maintain those relationships appropriately. Just to check, Mr. CEO, this was just a recommendation. This is not a policy that we have to have.
Thank you, Councillor Carey. That's correct. This is a recommendation tonight. You're not mandated or legislated to put this policy in place.
And so I suppose the last thing you want it to do is for staff and councillors not to be able to have good discussions about topics, but at the same time have a little bit of guideposts. So happy if anyone else wants to contribute as well.
Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I think just one note to make on this one is that the roles and responsibilities of councillors and the roles and responsibilities of staff members fall under different categories for different reasons. And something like this, as Councillor Nicholas has kind of outlined, it's not saying that we're not doing it now. It's just kind of future-proofing, I suppose, the continued relationship that us as councillors have with staff, and the best way to conduct business, because there is going to be overlaps with delegations that we have as councillors and things like that, and it's just kind of creating the guidance, especially for people that may be new to what it is that we do, in order to make that differentiation.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Anyone else wish to comment on this item? Councillor Janus.
Thank you. This policy's caused me a great deal of thought going forward. So when we first moved on to council, we had a council code of conduct, which we all had to read and sign and make sure we understood. And that was a reasonably comprehensive document. I take note that Councillor Hughes referred to it as a guidance document, and I think that's pretty relevant in the circumstances. What I don't want to see with something like that is a deterioration of a relationship between staff and councillors. I believe that we all have a role to conduct in a professional way, and we all do our job properly, but overarchingly we are a team of people who, for the betterment of our ratepayers and the people who visit here, make it the best place we can make it. I know that this has been brought forward probably by a report from the inspectorate, from well-intentioned people in Melbourne. I don't believe it necessarily. I don't believe at all that it reflects this current council, but I also take note of the fact that either what could happen into the future and what has happened previously could have effect on the running of council. The CEO, particularly in this day and age, has got a greater responsibility, I think, under OH&S rules, and there's so many more other regulations that have to be adhered to, and it's not an easy task. I still have some reservations about why we have to have it. I think we've been tarred with a bit of a brush from other councils that don't behave so well. But I think strategically looking forward, I think it's probably something we're just going to have to accept, we're going to have. But the point I make is I don't want it to see a deterioration of the working between councillors, management and staff. In fact, I'd actually like to see it picked up a little bit, that we have a more positive relationship going forward, knowing full well that we all have a task and a role to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Any other comments? I'll hand back to Councillor Nicholas. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up that the things that a couple of councillors have talked about the policy actually helps to more clearly delineate the role of councillors, which is very strategic and goal setting, and working with the CEO, who's the only person we employ and the only person we can effectively direct as a group, and then how we might interact with people that we can't actually direct. So I think it's really good that it's written so clearly, and I look forward to never needing it, Councillor Janus and everybody, but just in case it'll be in place, depending on the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Can I have a show of hands for those who are for the recommendation as on the council agenda tonight? That's a unanimous decision. Thank you. Agenda item 8.2 is with our Director of Assets, Mr Alan Rees, and first up is 821, the opportunity to acquire land at 13 Anderson Street in Bright. I'll hand to Mr Rees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This report relates to the opportunity that Council explored to purchase land at 123 Anderson Street in Bright. And this site is occupied by a service station and an adjacent cafe. Just by way of background, in late 2023, Council was offered the opportunity to participate in a non-binding expression of interest process for the possible acquisition of this land. And subsequent to that, Council considered that the land may assist in resolving expected saturation levels in the adjacent intersections on Gavin Street, Star Road and Anderson Street. In order to consider the strategic importance of this, Council officers commenced and initiated a strategic traffic assessment, which really brought to the fore that there was a possibility that the most important piece of work that could be done would be around that intersection, and an analysis was done to determine the extent of which the improvement could be achieved. The intersection study found that the existing configuration at Anderson Street and Gavin Street currently operates under excellent conditions, and while at Gavin Street and Star Road intersection, that particular intersection operates at very good conditions. Following the analysis done, which is a traffic modelling called a SIDRA analysis, it was found that the real improvements were for pedestrian and cycle interactions and not so much for traffic interactions. And as a result of that, and the fact that as the agent of change, the cost of an upgrade would fall to Council, it's recommended that Council considers withdrawing from the expression of interest process.
Thank you, Mr Rees. Moved by Councillor Janus. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nicholas, thank you. Mr Janus.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr Rees. I know this is matter has gone on for some time, but I think it has been important that due diligence and community consultation has been considered, because the amount of monies asked were considerable, and looking strategically forward is what we needed to do in this instance. So, and having those detailed, or those plans, drawings about what we can do or can't do into the future, I think is imperative in this circumstances. And I think it's looking at what's been given to us, it is probably the right thing to do then, and it allows the vendors to move forward with other opportunities, perhaps with somebody else that would make use of that land. One of the things that did concern me in that whole thing was the environmental side of things and the uncertainty of what was actually under the ground there, how long it's been there, and should we have acquired it, the cost to council of remediating that piece of land to a fit state. So added cost once again. So it's something that really had to be taken into consideration quite seriously. Not the fact that we're not in the business of running service stations and selling items, lollies and other things. So yeah, that's, thank you. Thank you to you and the staff for that report.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Nicholas.
I have a couple of questions to start with, Mr. Rees. One of them is an estimate of the current cost for the Regional Roads Victoria Preferred Elongated Roundabout, which is figure 5, option 4, for those of us who have the paper in front of them. Did we have an estimate for that at a briefing session that I've just forgotten, or do we not have one?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. We don't have a fixed estimate for that, but it would be significantly more than the recommended preferred option from Vic Roads.
Yep.
So if that's sitting at about 5 million, the additional works, etc., I may take a stab in the dark, don't hold me to it, but I would say it may be at least 50% more for a more complicated intersection.
So that's 7 million over and above purchase and remediation and etc. if we did go ahead. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to put a figure on it. We've talked about a lot of money. I just wanted to, gallery and anyone who might listen, to have a bit of an idea of what that figure is. I also had a question about engagement, and again, just for people who are listening who might be interested. There were some people who thought it was a great idea and some people who didn't. What was roughly the split in the percentage responses?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. So it was roughly a 50-50 split in for and against. I might just refer to my notes here. So we had 83 responses, and those that were unsupportive were slightly greater than those that were supportive.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. And following on from that, I understood that the people who didn't support purchase of the land in the centre of Brighton redoing the roundabout thought that there were other options to manage traffic if indeed we needed it. So just part of the due diligence that Councillor Janus has talked about is recognising that that is the case. And I think that I really wanted to congratulate our officers for, first of all, taking the opportunity, seeing and taking the opportunity. I know there were councillors involved in that too, but it was terrific to go, oh, look, we might be able to do something really good for the middle of Bright. And it was really important to do that due diligence and be really thorough about it. And again, it's probably taken a lot of officer staff, apart from hiring contractors, etc., to give us the information we needed. And I really wanted to say thanks to all of those people who commented, and it wasn't just the ones who engaged through the survey, but people who spoke to councillors. And thanks most of all to the vendors who really supported the Upland Shire through this whole process and were very supportive of us making that purchase and changing the centre of Bright. So I think it's been a really good process, and again, we've yet to see what the vote comes out with. But it's been a long process for the vendors to wait, and a really heartfelt thank you to those people, and that's probably enough for me.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholas. Anyone else to speak to this motion? Thank you, Councillor Prime.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I can only agree with my fellow councillors here. I think if we hadn't at least had a good look at it, we'd be kicking ourselves and always wondering if we should have had a look and investigated it further. That went on up for expression of interest in late 2023, so I think you're spot on in thanking the vendors for being patient with that and allowing us to have a really good look at it. I think all ratepayers appreciate that we want to spend money wisely and do the right thing, and obviously we've got options for the future for that intersection, but I agree with this report and happy to take that. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Prime. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with comments that have been made already. I think it's really important to remember that these types of investigations are showing forward thinking with strategic value of aspects of our towns and what that could look like into the future. So I want to thank the staff that took the time and to really look into that, and the vendors for being patient with that. I think it's also really important to note that conversations happening in the community don't always reflect the thorough research and the diligence that council staff are actually conducting at the time. So 83 responses formally in the scheme of things is not a lot of people. And as Councillor Nicholas noted, there are other discussions that are being had there behind the scenes that aren't formal notifications as well. But we just need to ensure that these processes are they are carried out properly, and speculation and rumours is only going to add to the workload of what staff are trying to do. So this is where I think going directly to the source of accurate information is really important, and this is where the official updates by council are going to play part in what it is that is looked at in these bigger strategic decisions that are happening, because I can assure you that some of the phone calls that were being had for myself, that the rumour mills were definitely going around. So I thank everyone for being patient in this process, but please be mindful that those bigger rumour mills can actually have a detrimental effect in the processes and the timeframes that they take to undertake by council staff as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Well put. Councillor Keeble, anything to remark? Okay. I'll refer back to Councillor Janus for a right of reply. Anything else to add from you? No. Okay. Well, I'll put this motion to the vote as prepared in the agenda tonight. Can I have a show of hands for that motion? That's unanimous for that recommendation. Thank you. And I think the vendor and others duly noted a significant piece of work. Very appreciative of the vendor's patience to work through that community opportunity. Agenda 822, Bryant Fish Passage Project Deferral. Mr. Rees, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So just by way of introduction, this relates to the questions on notice earlier. The North East Catchment Management Authority have advised that there is a significant shortfall in funding to deliver the Bryant Fish Passage project, and that despite significant efforts, no opportunities for alternative funding sources have been identified at this stage. As such, it is recommended that Council supports NECMA's deferral of this project. Probably worth noting that this project has its origins in May 2020 post-bushfire, where DELP at the time provided $2.6 million of funding for the construction of the fishway, and following an extensive design process, unfortunately the responses from the market were significantly greater than the available funding. So NECMA's preferred step from here is to defer this project until funding becomes available in due course. The recommendations are as tabled to support NECMA's deferral, and note also that a geotechnical study will be undertaken with the current funding to de-risk any future construction plans.
Have someone move the recommendation? Councillor Janus. Councillor Nicholas. Thank you. Councillor Janus.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rees. Not that I'm a great fisherman by any means, but I do like fishing. But I know that our Ovens River is a very special river in the state of things, and our catchment area overall is extremely important for the waters that run down our rivers, the Kewell River, our rivers here, for the that run into the Murray River, basically, eventually. But equally, the importance of our fishways or for the travelling fish and our environment is extremely important. It's unfortunate that the costs have come out so much over the estimated cost that it's put this project behind. I'm not going to say it has totally kiboshed it at all, because I think everybody recognises the importance of fish being able to get upstream and do what they do. So let's hope that sufficient funding comes forward, and hopefully it'll probably be from, let's ask the federal government. I won't go into but other governments may have less money, but at this stage the federal government I think might be a better option to try and get, because these are rivers of national importance to our area, and therefore they have a responsibility too, and Councillor Nicholas has more experience in that field than I. So anyway, let's hope they get some funds going forward.
Thanks, Councillor Janus. Councillor Nicholas.
Yep, I've got some questions to begin with. So there was a suite of possible replacement projects put forward to DECA, I understand, and the Porpunka Weir concept was put forward. What was the response, Mr. Rees?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. The response was that that was not a suitable project for the funding from DECA. So, you know, they're the ultimate decision makers to where the funds are able to be spent, but that option was declined.
Thank you. And I just did want to pick up the critical importance of the ovens. I know we've talked about it a couple of times already tonight. The Lower Ovens is listed as a heritage river under the Victorian legislation, and it is absolutely critical for the ecology of the Murray-Darling Basin as a whole, and not just the Murray River. There's in my previous life, I got to listen to people who knew a lot about fish and had put trackers on Murray cod, and they swim up and down the Murray and up and down the Edwards and up the Darling as far as they can get. So it's not just down here and downstream, it's pretty significant. So, and the Lower Ovens is obviously supported by the water that comes down from here, and vice versa, that the animals, the ecology of the Lower Ovens, if it can move all the way up, is well supported by what's upstream. So, critical, and it's really disappointing that DECA didn't pick up that there's another blockage over summers. So my other question, Mr. Rees, is about the intended project, which is engineering and geotechnical, and there's the whole Fishway project is complicated by the use of the River Pool, the dredging of the River Pool, and the use of the River Pool in summer. And so the question is, does the geotechnical include fluviogeomorphology, or is it just about the rocks and the where we're thinking the Fishway might go at some point in time? I'm just thinking there might be synergies if we try and pull it all together.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. I'm unaware of the extent of the total scope for the geotechnical analysis. However, I do know that it is focused on the substrate in particular for the anchoring of any structure to de-risk the construction of that particular fishway. So I'm afraid I couldn't comment on
the dredging and use, but it should take into account flooding.
Yes, I would presume so. It would need to be able to withstand planned or modelled flows.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Any other questions? Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Acting Mayor Kelly. Good discussions. I know I've said publicly on public record at a previous ordinary council meeting that I wonder how we get a licence to have those two weirs on the Ovens River, given the importance of the Ovens River. While I agree with the recommendation, I think there's a bigger question and discussion to be had and answers in regards to the Ovens River health and not having the weirs so that fish can move and other river environments and ecology can move freely up and down that river without having the need for a fish ladder at both those places. That's all I'll say, really. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Prime.
Oh, no, sorry.
Anyone else to speak? I'll hand back to Councillor Janus. Anything further to add? Okay. I will put this recommendation to the vote as drafted in the OCM papers. Can I show of hands to support the recommendation for it? That's a unanimous vote. Thank you. Item 823, the asset management policy, and I'll hand over again to Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report relates to the adoption of the Asset Management Policy version 3. Just by way of context, Council's Asset Management Policy outlines Council's approach to the management of the assets for which it is the custodian and provides clear objectives, defines key principles and lists responsibilities that underpin asset management. This particular policy has been reviewed by officers and we're proposing some minor changes to the policy, really to bring it up to date. Nothing other than that. Probably worth noting is some wording that really clarifies that the asset renewal schedule will inform our 10-year long-term financial plan and also bringing things in line with more recent legislation. For Council's consideration this evening, we're recommending that although the policy does require community consultation to be undertaken, given the minor nature of the review changes and the ability of the community to actually impact these changes, we're recommending that Council considers adopting the policy this evening. However, if Council chooses to undertake further engagement, we can change the recommendations and put the policy out for community consultation and come back at a future Council meeting. So that's in Council's hands. The recommendation is for Council to consider adopting.
Thank you. Move Councillor Prime. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Keeble, thank you. Councillor Prime.
No, I've got no issues with that, considering how minimal the changes are being made here. It doesn't seem to be an issue, so happy to support this one.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Councillor Keeble?
No, as read, administrative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Anyone else wish to speak to this item?
It's a good question.
Councillor Nicholas.
Mr. Rees, does having a policy like this actually help with asset management?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. In fact, it is imperative to have this policy because it sets out at high level what our principles are, how we look to maintain, renew and upgrade our facilities across the Shire. And these facilities are crucial assets for the community, and our responsibility as the custodian of these is to ensure that they're well maintained. And this policy sets out our obligations and responsibilities, which then feed into our asset management processes and procedures, and our asset management system, in fact, then sets up the maintenance and renewal and upgrade programs.
Thank you for that. And there was a giggle, but I was just trying to illustrate how important policies are, because we've got a lot of them on our agenda tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholas and Mr Rees. If there's no other questions, I'll put this matter to the vote. Can I have a show of hands for the recommendation as prepared? Another unanimous, thank you. Continuing on in the realm of Mr Rees is item 824, the footpath construction program. Thank you, Mr Rees.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if I may, I have a conflict of interest in relation to this recommendation. In 2021, I declared a conflict in relation to specifically the Martley Street section of footpath. The conflict I have is it's on the shortest direct route between my house and the local school where my kids attend. I refreshed that conflict of interest recently when I understood that footpath had become a priority for the team, and what I'm proposing is I leave the room at this point for you to make your determination. I have noted the conflict or asked the team to note that conflict in the report that they presented.
Proposal accepted. Great. The CEO is leaving the room at 5:52. And I'll now hand to Mr Rees to present his report.
Thank you, Mayor. This report relates to the award of a contract for the construction of concrete footpaths in Myrtleford and Porepunkah. So just by way of context, Council maintains a footpath register where it records potential new footpaths that have been identified either through strategic planning, condition inspections, or even requests from the public. The sections of footpath along Mummery Road, Prince Street and Martley Street are the subject of this contract, and they are the ones that came to the top of our prioritisation evaluation for this year's programme. The tender was advertised using tenders.net and following Council's normal procurement process. From a financial and resource implications, I'd like to draw Council's attention to the fact that the program was budgeted in the adopted budget at $150,000. Year to date, we've spent close to $15,000 on some other works. And so by considering the award of this contract, which would enable these 3 footpaths to be completed as a package, we're also recommending that Council acknowledges a shortfall or shall we call it an unbudgeted overspend of $21,000 compared to the adopted budget. However, this unbudgeted expenditure will be offset from an underspend in the Development Engineering Roads program. So no net increase in funding required or requested. And as such, the recommendation is for Council to consider awarding this contract.
Thank you, Mr Rees. I think it was moved by Councillor Nicholas from what I saw. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Prime, thank you. I need to look at the screen in front of me a little more for the online participants. Councillor Nicholas.
Haven't got a lot to add. We need footpaths. I'd like to see that, or I'd like to think that we're building them with low carbon concrete and pursuing those sort of options as much as we can. I don't think we are in this particular instance, but as we move into the future, and that's enough.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Prime.
Oh, I have a suggestion which Director Rees is going to love here. I see that Macedon Rangers are doing, in conjunction with RMIT, coffee grounds in a concrete footpath trial. And so I'd be curious to see if that might pop up in some of our footpaths in the near future. So happy to support this one though. I do drink lots of coffee as well. It would make me feel a little bit less guilty, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. A great suggestion. Anyone else wish to comment on this?
Yeah.
Councillor Janus.
Seeing as we have a shortfall, perhaps we can use sixpence.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Before we move any further on this topic, any other questions? Those online? Look, just, Mr Rees, one quick question from me on consultation before we go to the vote. There's a statement in consultation, impacted residents and businesses will be informed prior to works commencing to set expectations around disruptions and changes to property access. What form does that information and what is the timing of that, if you don't mind?
Thank you, Mayor. So typically what we do is we door knock the residents and businesses that are impacted by any works. And we also request that the contractor actually takes charge of that to ensure that they're able to manage the logistics and dynamics as scope, waxes and wanes, and access requirements are managed, I suppose, in the near term on a daily basis as required. So door knocking and having those discussions, and as the project nears mobilisation, obviously there's more intensive communication to understand residents' requirements, and then contractors flex around that where possible.
So door knocking sort of weeks out before the work commences, and then in the days coming up and on the days there'll be obviously the logistics of access and all those things that will work through. Okay,
correct.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, I'll put it back to Councillor Nicholas. Anything else to add? Okay, I'll put this recommendation to the vote. Those for, as it's drafted in the papers tonight. Thank you, that's unanimous. If someone would like to... Thank you, Mrs Pike. The CEO is rejoining the room at time 5:57. Thank you, Mr Jeremy. I think the upshot of that agenda item was watch for coffee grinds on your wall. Item 8.3 tonight with the Director of Customer and Community is Helen Havercroft, and 8.3.1 the Community Grant and Event Funding Programs. Over to you, Ms Havercroft.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly, and I'm taking the notes as well, so please bear with me between reports. I noticed also that my reports have been bookended by two things that are not policies. So the first and the last this evening aren't policies, but the rest are. So the first report this evening relates to the Community Grant and Event Funding Programmes. For the super observant in our community, they will know that this came to the April Council meeting as well. I would say that some hiccups in the process that was followed meant that recommendation 1 to note the Victorian Auditor General Office report to Parliament in May 2022 was successfully moved, seconded and voted upon, but that recommendation 2 didn't have such a clear passage, and so is being returned this evening in a slightly modified format. We felt that the intent at the April meeting was that those items were being split, so we've prejudged that by placing them within 2 recommendations this evening. The rest of the report remains largely unchanged, apart from to change the tense of when the event funding and the community grant funding was opened. They opened on the 10th of May, as planned, to make sure that we could meet our schedule. But as the recommendations are, they are to exclude councillors from the Council's Community Grant Assessment Panel, and secondly, to exclude councillors from Council's Event Funding Assessment Panels.
Thank you, Ms Havercroft, and perhaps before I ask for a mover and a seconder, is there any clarification required from any of the councillors in terms of the basis for this item to be in the agenda again tonight? Comfortable? Okay, can I ask for a mover and seconder, please? Someone to move this motion.
I'll move it.
Councillor Prime. Looking on screen, there we are, there's a movement. Councillor Hughes, thank you. Over to you, Councillor Prime.
There might be some deja vu here for people who were tuning in last meeting. Yeah, I'm still not sure how I feel about this. Like, lots of the conversation we had last month was that we believe that councillors' input on these grant panels is important because we take in we've got a pretty broad understanding of the community, and we've got the perks of our current lot of councillors. We sort of all come from a different section of the Alpine Shire, so we've got a pretty good grasp on what's going on and who's had funding before and all those things. I'd also like to think we've got a group who are pretty good at declaring conflicts of interest and being aware of when there is an issue. But obviously it's come back to another vote, and happy to hear someone else's opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, thank you. This is one of those ones where you can understand the reasoning, I suppose, behind it in terms of conflict of interest and things like that. But as Councillor Prime has mentioned, you know, we're pretty good at that. And I think with the event funding and the community funding that we did over the last couple of years is, you know, with that hot seat where this person was out, that person was out, and we'd vote on these things when we knew that there was a direct involvement in that. I think things to consider are, you know, councillors are elected to represent the communities and understand the local needs and priorities. And so involvement in these panels would ensure that there's another voice heard in terms of aligning decisions with broader goals and interests, with discussions that have been had, not just in what people are looking for, but that bigger strategic view. And I think it's our responsibility to our constituents on how these funds are allocated, and making sure that you know, it's the panel members involved are across everything. And I think that councillors actually provide a really valuable asset to assessing these applications personally. So where I can see both sides, I suppose a decision tonight would be the way of the future, and what that's going to look like for the strategic objectives of what the councillors are making decisions on for community benefit, and maximising that for them.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Acting Mayor Kelly. At the last ordinary council meeting, I certainly voted against this motion. My reasonings for that a month ago was, Councillor Hughes has already mentioned in regards to the importance of councillors' play in regards to understand the community and the community needs. Since then, we've had some further explanations at briefing sessions about the need for, it's probably not the right word, but for the action, for this action and the desire for this action from council officers. In regards to this, the events funding is set by a document, in essence, Tier 1, 2 and 3 in the event funding policy document. So I'm comfortable about that one. And then through discussions, I would urge that, depending on the way the vote goes for this one tonight, that if it is for this, that briefing sessions on the events funding and community grants funding becomes a little bit more in depth, so that actually councillors will receive both recommendations from the panel in a briefing session, and then councillors can then also make changes to those recommendations before they come to an ordinary council meeting. So I'm more comfortable about that process, that there is a stopgap in there for councillors to actually have a good look at the recommendations from the events committee and the community grants committee, if there's no councillors in there, to have a discussion together as a group of 7 at a briefing session to see about, you know, whether we need to make any changes. So I'm more comfortable about that now that we've sort of worked through that process a little bit more. But it's been a good discussion, because in essence, you know, these particular grants, especially the community ones, are really important to our community. And, you know, we often have already spoken to people about different grants and know some of the history behind some of the applications. That's all I'll say. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas.
So I'm starting with a question yet again. What might the implications be, I think it's Havercroft, of us not taking up the VAGO recommendation?
So we have accepted the VAGO recommendation as part of our Audit and Risk Committee. So it would sit there as we're going to place it to a council meeting. It sits there as an action at the moment, and we would just continue to have it open and unresolved. But from what happens to council, as long as we maintain good governance, and that was a range of risks that they identified. It didn't just include the removal of councillors from panel. There was strengthening the assessments, strengthening our conflict of interest processes. I think there's quite a few things, A to M, of things that were available to us to support the strengthening of our processes. Then all of those things being equal, there's no further recourse back onto council, but it was a strong recommendation from the Vargo report, and it was corroborated by our internal audit.
Thank you for that. Picking up what the other councillors said, I think there's community expectations that councillors are involved in these decisions, and whether it's through strengthened processes on the panels or a second step that Councillor Keeble suggested. I think I'm actually wondering whether we should just put this on the table and have further discussions about it, because there's different ways to skin the cat. But I'm happy to take it to the vote if everyone thinks that's a good thing to do in the first instance. Some of my thinking was to make put together a conflict of interest guidelines specifically for these panels, because it's not just councillors who have conflicts on them. There's other community members and staff members who've had to come and go in panels I've been on. So do some plain English conflict of interest guidelines. You know, you can go to the Act, and there's general and there's material, and it's, you know, you can sort of get it, and we are good at it, as Councillor Hughes has pointed out, but it just makes it strengthens the process if it's simple and plain English, and then the other stuff that's in this report and that Ms Havercroft mentioned is a different way to do it than the way that Councillor Keeble's mentioned, so I just think we probably need more time to talk about it. Sorry.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Janus.
Thank you. Once again, this is one of those items that causes me concern as an elected member of council by the community, that somebody down there thinks that I do not have the common sense to make a decision when it comes to spending council funds. They let me sit here and approve a $23 million budget, and yet when it comes to supporting community groups in grant applications, whether it be for events or whatever it might be, I seem to be incompetent at doing that. And I'm not going to sit here and be labelled by an officer from Vago saying that I'm incompetent to make these decisions and that I am not trusted in that area. I'd invite them actually to come here, and any internal auditors, and speak to me face to face and tell me why I'm not competent to be in this position. And I've been sat on a number of these boards now, and as one of the other councillors said, there's nothing to say that the staff members don't have conflicts of interest. This is a small community. Staff members don't have conflicts of interest. Members of the public don't have conflicts of interest that sit on those panels. So what's the difference with a councillor? And there's a question then, when it comes to the time where it has to be approved by council for that spend, who approves it? Does it come to council then to say, well, you know, this organisation gets that amount, that organisation or whatever gets that amount, and we then have to declare a conflict of interest in that circumstance? Or is it going to come back under CEO delegation to say, right, this is the community's recommendation, this is the panel's recommendations, and I will approve it? So that's an unclear point to me, and that's something that the CEO has got a $200,000 pit of money that he can put out. Not that I believe that there's going to be anywhere near that sort of money being spread out to the public in these circumstances. So that's unclear to me. So this is I know the federal member for Indi, Ms Haynes, is pushing this pork barrelling side of things, but I don't believe this is at all relevant to this council. We are here to represent the whole of council, not just our own little section of the world, and I think we do that very well. So I cannot, and I don't, and the Audit and Risk Committee, you know, I sit on the Audit and Risk Committee as well, and they will only, like Vago, they will make a recommendation. That they don't have to say this is what council will do. They recommend something from their point of view, and then we as council have to look at that and see if that is feasible and the right thing to do from their experience. But I don't see any of that in this. And as Councillor Hughes has said, and Councillor Nicholas too, that the community expect us to be involved in these sorts of things. We are representative of the community. We are elected representatives. We're not some little kindergarten people who are being told what to do because we might hurt ourselves or, you know. We've been around and we understand what is required of us. I go back to the staff policy earlier and I made some commentary about that. Little by little, I see that the roles and responsibilities of councillors is being eroded. And because it feels, I don't know why, but councillors are on here, it's sitting up here for the betterment of their community. And this is one way that we engage with community. We know our community. So I can't support this recommendation at all, and I won't.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Prime, any final remarks? I'll put this recommendation as prepared in the papers to a vote. Can I just have a show of hands for the recommendation, please? Can I have a show of hands for against the recommendation? Thank you. That is unanimous against.
Mr.
Councillor
Harris,
Nicholas.
I was just suggesting we've already had this is the second time we've had it to the council meeting. I just wondered whether other councillors would like to, I know it's policy on the run, but whether we could draft a recommendation that does talk about strengthening processes and keeping this on the committees, or whether we just wait till next month and have a good talk about it.
It's a good suggestion, Councillor Nicholas. I think there is, as voted down tonight, I guess there is zero change to the current process, is the implications. We have two options. We could leave that till motions without notice or with notice given or later in the agenda in general business, or we could address that recommendation now or suggestion. Anyone have an appetite? Councillor Keeble?
I don't have an appetite to discuss it now. I think we already have policies and processes involved for what we do in those committees that we've followed, and there hasn't been any issues with them. I'm absolutely happy to discuss it in the briefing sessions, and if we need to bring it to the next ordinary council meeting, I'm happy with that rather than doing that tonight. Yeah.
More than happy. Good.
You're comfortable, Councillor Nicholas? Great. Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
I was just going to add in there, I suppose, that what we voted against tonight is excluding councillors from those panels. What we have noted is we've accepted the VAGO information, and in the report that's given is that we are going to look and strengthen the things that have been noted as well. So it's not that we're ignoring VAGO's report as such, it's just that this part of the report of what they're wanting us to implement we don't agree with. So the processes are going to change and be strengthened. It's just that this part of it we're not going to at this point in time.
I think I take that as a good clarification, Councillor Hughes, on this item.
And in case you didn't see, Ms Havercroft was nodding.
And a final remark on that one, occasionally I get feedback that actually why aren't councillors involved in more of the tender and commercial processes, that we run a panel process that is run by officers and recommendations come to us. So there's always different perspectives on how much councillors should be involved in the administration of council. Item 832 is the commencement, I think, of what is a quintuplet of policies tonight, Ms Havercroft. So 832 is draft governance rules and election period policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So the draft governance rules and election period policy is being presented with some proposed amendments to both of those policies for the purposes of placing it onto public consultation. So the governance rules set out the requirements, not only the conduct of council meetings, but many other processes, including the election of the mayor, the deputy mayor, declarations of conflict of interest, and our election period policy, which is obviously pertinent given the forthcoming elections. The proposed amendments mean that it will be possible for Alpine Shire Council to have 2 scheduled ordinary council meetings within the election period, whereas under the previous Act and policy, this was likely to only affect 1 meeting. Slight changes in the wording throughout the policy have been identified to allow for this proposed change. Some of the other issues that were identified as we went through and did a review related to the Operation Sandon report. So whilst we're expecting or anticipating that model governance rules might come out, they haven't been through Parliament yet, and there's no certainty on the timeframe for when they might, and we didn't want that to hold up undertaking a review at this time, and we have no idea what they may look or feel like when they arrive. So some of the changes that we could make changes to our governance rules around Operation Sandon that seem sensible and applicable to us now were the prevention of voting en bloc, which is where each agenda item must be considered individually rather than moving and seconding them all together. That the recording of minutes, which we already do, would set out whether it's carried unanimously, just carried, or etc. We already do that, but we wanted to clarify it within our governance rules. Other amendments that we're seeking through the amendments to the governance rule that are being proposed are that special council meetings require, currently in the governance rules, all councillors at the meeting to unanimously agree. So they don't need to, it could be all councillors, I apologise, all councillors have to say yes, and that can be exceptionally impractical. So we would like to amend it that all councillors in attendance at the meeting unanimously agree. We'd like to make some changes, small changes to the public question time, clarifying that question time will not be held during an election period, regardless of the number of ordinary council meetings that might be impacted. That public question time, where a question is taken on notice, that a formal response will be read out at the following ordinary council meeting, and noting that the question is to allow for clarification of matters of public interest, to avoid the potential for very personal information to be being shared in a public forum at a council meeting. That the minutes, clarification of the minutes must include the names and the mover of the seconder. We also do that already, but it's not currently in our governance rules. And we've clarified the definition of informal meetings of councillors, which are then reported in the ordinary council meeting minutes. There's also, we found some typos that we've taken the opportunity to fix. The release of the governance rules and election period policy at this council meeting will ensure that they can be released for public comment and be considered for adoption prior to the election period commencing. Public submissions will be sought on the proposed changes and considered prior to adoption at a forthcoming ordinary council meeting.
Can I have someone speak to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Janus. Someone to second? Councillor Prime, thank you. Councillor Janus.
Just a question, Ms Havercroft. If this recommendation doesn't go out I'm sorry, I've got the wrong item. I think they're relatively minor sort of changes, a lot of them, but if it doesn't go tonight, does that mean then that it's going out for public draft, isn't it? Yes. So if it doesn't go out tonight, if it doesn't proceed tonight, then I understand that there's not sufficient time for it to come back before council for the next election period. It'll have to go into the new time.
Thank you, Councillor Janice. So yes, whilst it won't be in caretaker period if it didn't get up this month but got up next month, for example, we don't want to run right up against caretaker period, which is will commence on the 17th of September. So to avoid that and to do any business immediately before that, if it doesn't get up this evening, and that's not imperative, it would come after the council elections now, so probably at the start of 2025.
Okay. Well, my view is that given any new councillors in the next term have a good run from the very start, so I would make recommendation for this policy.
Thanks, Councillor Janice. Councillor Prime.
Yep, I've got no issues with this. Let's get it out for the public to have a look at if they would like to.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Any other comments or remarks on this proposal? Okay, I'll put the recommendation to a vote. All those for the recommendation as prepared. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.3 is the draft councillor expenses and support policy. Ms Havercroft.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Council is required to maintain an expenses policy for the reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses for councillors and members of delegated committees in accordance with Section 41 of the Local Government Act 2020. So officers have reviewed the existing council expenses policy and have also undertaken a benchmarking exercise across other council policies of the same nature, both expenses policies and support policies where they exist. And have undertaken that benchmarking to see where the outliers are, but also to see where Alpine Shire Council sits within the mix of other policies of a similar nature for similar sized councils across Victoria, with a focus really on the Hume region as our nearest and dearest neighbours. So it's noted that while Alpine's current policy was not out of alignment with other policies in the benchmarking exercise, it did lack detail of the types of support that are already and currently provided to councillors but had not previously been documented, as we didn't consider them to be part of an expenses and reimbursement policy, but it was clear that other councils had moved into that space to provide greater clarity on the support that was being provided to all councillors. The draft councillor expenses and support policy has been drafted to specifically include support sections common amongst the other councils, which make it clearer to councillors and the organisation and our community the entitlements and support that are already available and are proposed. There's a range of inclusions in the draft councillor expenses and support policy, and I'm happy to take questions on the specifics that sit within there. But the key ones that we have made some changes to are allowances, the resources and facilities that are available, the administrative support, the transport and the use of private vehicles, our insurance, legal advice and work cover, changes to our childcare provisions for staff who require it, councillors who require it, and our information and communications technology provisions available to councillors for reimbursement. So the recommendation this evening is that councillors note the draft council expenses and support policy as drafted, endorse the policy for public submissions to be placed onto public exhibition, consider those submissions and present to a future ordinary council meeting.
Thank you, Ms Havercroft. Have I got someone to speak to the motion? Councillor Prime? Second, Councillor Nicholas. Janice, thank you.
I think it's working. Is that working? Yep. Sorry. Sorry, my microphone's blinking at me, so I'm not. Is it still going? Yeah. Sorry, guys. Yep, happy to support this and get this out to a draft. I think the conversations we've had in briefings is basically how do we make reduce barriers for people running for council and wanting to be on council, and you want a broad selection of the community, ideally, so you've got different ideas and opinions coming forward. And I'll be honest, without some of the things included in some of the expenses policy, it would be really difficult for me to make it to council meetings and be able to contribute. So I see that as just helping keep a broad range of people on council. So I'm happy for this to go out for public submissions and have a bit of a look if it interests you.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Councillor Janus.
Yeah. I think it works though.
As Councillor Prime said, reaches out to a broad section of the community. I would suggest that anybody who is a current councillor and potential councillors even to have a look at it, because it may determine if you stand or don't stand for council going forward. But I know this council is a very lean council. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Hughes.
I'm sorry that this question hasn't come up from me in discussions that we've had in the past briefing sessions, but we're essentially voting on a policy document that is going to enable us to be able to be reimbursed for expenses, and it's only affecting us as councillors. Is this not something like, I don't know how to put it, is it not a conflict that we're approving a document to go out for us to be paid? That makes sense. I'm just trying to clarify that in my own head, if I could.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. I'm not sure. I have a thought on an answer to that, but perhaps one of the officers wishes to respond. Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only comment I could make is that the previous version of this policy was adopted by council, so we followed exactly the same process as previously without perhaps giving it the same thought that you have, Councillor Hughes.
Yes, and I know that we've voted on this in the past, but it's just literally just run through my head that we're essentially voting on the way in which we get paid, and what we can get reimbursed for. Is this not something that the CEO should be taking lead on without councillors' decision? I'm just questioning what that looks like in terms of governance rules, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Perhaps I could reflect on the earlier commentary from Councillor Janus about the community is voted in the set of councillors that we have here, and there's a level of trust here that councillors are going to do the right thing by the community, and part of that is also finding that balance between, the reimbursement that is provided to councillors for doing their job, as well as, recognising that that's a cost to the community. So I think there's a level of trust that's placed in the councillors to make good decisions, and that includes around the reimbursement that is provided back to councillors.
Thank you, CEO.
Just a clarification.
Yeah, just a clarification from Councillor Janus, I think.
Yeah, just a clarification, Councillor. Of the allowances that we get paid are set by the Victorian Independent Remuneration Tribunal. What we're voting on tonight, I believe, is a draft council expenses and support policy to go out to the public to make note of, and any suggestions that they feel that should be made. But we don't set what indirectly we don't set what our allowances are. The tribunal does that on our behalf, and we can accept or decline what the tribunal recommends.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. I think that's a useful point to clarify. Councillor Keeble.
Acting Mayor Kelly, Councillor Hughes raises a very good point there. I would also say in regards to when councillors vote for the rates. You could have the same argument about the conflict of interest from voting for rates, but I will note that this document, as Councillor Janus has raised, has been put together by council officers using the recommendations that are there and available for them. I will note there are some of the council expenses there are less than what is currently, and some are more than what is currently. So it's a document that's actually, just for the public and ratepayers listening, the document put together by the council officers for us to provide a recommendation for yes or no in that regards as well. It's not a document that we've put together.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Back to Councillor Prime. Any further comments? Okay, we'll put this recommendation to the vote as drafted in the papers tonight. Can I see a show of hands for the recommendation? That's unanimously supported. Thank you. Moving on to item 3.4 is the draft dealing with difficult customers policy. Ms Havercroft.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. This report relates to the public exhibition of the draft dealing with difficult customer policy, a policy that we don't currently have, so this would be version 1. Alpine Shire Council staff, volunteers, contractors and councillors interact with a diverse range of customers each day. At times, customers exhibit complex behaviour which can be difficult to manage. This behaviour can range from slightly challenging to clearly unreasonable. Complex behaviour is identified by the Victorian Ombudsman as any behaviour that officers find challenging. In the majority of cases, officers are equipped to deal with most types of behaviour using prevention and responding strategies as set out in the policy. Behaviour becomes unreasonable when, because of its nature or frequency, it raises health, safety, resource or equity issues for those employees, volunteers, contractors, councillors or other people who use council services. The draft policy is heavily based on the Victorian Ombudsman's Good Practice Guide, Managing Complex Complainant Behaviour, to ensure it represents best practice in complex customer behaviour management. The draft dealing with the difficult customer policy is an important document to enable council staff, volunteers, contractors and councillors to manage difficult customers in a way that protects the rights, health and safety of all those involved. But I think it's also really important to note that we have a responsibility as officers and all the other groups listed not to create complex behaviours in our interactions with our community and our customers by making sure that we provide them with the best possible customer service up front so that they don't become unreasonable in their behaviour with us as a result of something that we may have done. So the recommendation this evening is that we endorse the draft dealing with difficult customer policy version 1 for the purposes of seeking public submissions and consider those submissions, presenting a report to a further council meeting.
Thank you, Ms Havercroft. I have someone to move the motion, Councillor Hughes, and a seconder, Councillor Nicholas. Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's having to policy document everything. I think it sometimes can be overkill, but I also completely understand why these things happen when you come to the corporate sector with so many people involved. So I suppose policies like this are here to promote consistency and fairness across the board on how staff can handle different difficult customers in that consistent manner. And I suppose it's also there to enhance the training and development as well, knowing that there are so many different conflict resolution problems and things like that that arise for staff members. I think it's allowing that step-by-step approach on, okay, this has happened, where do I go next, what do I do? So I think that these types of things, although sometimes are over documented, I completely understand why they're in place as well. So.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Nicholas.
Ms Howarcroft, the policy reads well. I think it's sad that we might need a policy like this to back up our staff and be sure that customers are safe too, by the way. But I wondered whether there's some training intended for our people to help them keep calm when there's complex behaviour so that it doesn't accelerate, or there's another word, I can't remember it. Escalate, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. So yes, we're focusing on our frontline staff, so with some training in our customer service team first off, but there are lots of front-facing staff members out there who we would like to have trained in de-escalation models so that it doesn't become a heated conversation, that they can manage the expectations of the customer and maintain their own quiet calm in that space to get a resolution for the community member, resident, visitor, whoever it is that's presented themselves in a way that we feel is very challenging at the time.
That's really terrific to hear, and I guess I'm just going to reiterate it's really sad that we need to have this sort of backup, that there's enough people in the community who've forgotten how to behave properly. So.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholas. Anyone else wish to speak to this agenda item? No? Okay, we'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in supporting of the recommendations drafted tonight? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. (835) is the draft public transparency policy. Ms Howarcroft, thank you. Apologies, I forgot you're multitasking there tonight.
Sorry, Councillor Kelly, I couldn't get my speaker to work. We've managed it. Council's public transparency policy was first developed in August 2020 as required by the Local Government Act 2020. As the policy is approaching its 4-year review cycle, it is timely that the policy is reviewed. And similar to a conversation earlier this evening, it's being reviewed in advance of the election caretaker period, although its 4 years is not quite up. The policy recognises Council's commitment to sound democratic governance and recognises the importance of providing transparency as a foundation for community confidence, community engagement and our accountability. The policy clarifies what information, as a minimum, will be published and what information will be made available to the public upon request, and outlines the mechanism for making a request. Broadly, it lists the documents that we will place in the public domain, those that can be available on request, those that we maintain a confidential nature to, and what the route is for seeking those documents if they're not immediately available on our website. Once again, Operation Sandon has played a part in this space too. As yet, we don't have any of the recommendations that have come out from the Parliament in relation to this, but we may expect some changes in this space in the future. Our review of the public transparency policy showed very minor amendments following a desktop review. So we changed it to version 2. We set out a slightly altered application to access information. The decisions that were taken at council meetings added reference that recording of council meetings open to the public are made available on our website, ensuring a consistency with the requirements of our governance rules. So just bringing some matching to those two policies. We set out more clearly what disputes information is available out there and which other recourse to regulatory bodies people have available to them and where they can get that information. We undertook a gender impact assessment on the policy as it was timely as part of the review, and we updated the policy references in the supporting documents. So the recommendation this evening is that Council endorses for public exhibition the public transparency policy, considers any submissions that are sought through that exhibition period, and presents the final transparency policy to a future council meeting.
Thank you, Ms Howarcroft. Someone to move the motion, Councillor Prime, and someone to second, please, Councillor Hughes. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll just speak to it briefly.
Sorry, Councillor Prime. I'll move.
Sorry.
Just got a microphone issue.
Sorry, I was a bit slow here. No, they're working. They're just blinking. That's all. No, happy for this to go out to for public
a submission, like Ms Havercroft said, just some minor changes in there, and just another thing Operation Sandon has had an impact on. So we'll probably keep hearing some more about that.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Yeah, this is one of those things that's been there, and it's making those, those changes that are required in the governance. But adopting these types of policies, I suppose, it's just making sure that our community have access to the information, and we and them can be held accountable for the decisions that are being made and the information that supports that. So it's a must-have. And I think personally, Alpine Shire go above and beyond when it comes to transparency on a lot of things that we don't necessarily have to, but choose to for the community's benefit. So I agree with these types of policies.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Does anyone else wish to speak to this agenda item? Just a point of clarification for me, it could be a question on notice, Ms Havercroft. We flag in section 341 of the draft policy or updated policy, council meetings are recorded and made available on the council's website. Are they links to the social media platform that hosts it, or do we also have backups in our own IT system, so to speak? We can take that on notice, but I'm just thinking about one day we might use that social media platform, and how do people look at the archive of meetings?
So thank you, Councillor Kelly. So they are recorded and put onto YouTube, but they are recorded by us, and we hold a record of our council meetings recordings. What I may have to take on notice is where that is held, like what system, but yes, we don't hand it over to another body to look after for us.
Thank you, Ms Havercroft. I could make a joke about the cloud, but I won't. Okay, we'll put this recommendation to a vote. All those for the recommendation as drafted? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So item 3.6 is the fair access policy. Ms Havercroft.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So this is a new policy again. The fair access policy has been developed, and following public exhibition, we're recommending this evening that it is adopted by council. So from the 1st of July 2024, it will be essential for all Victorian councils to have a gender equitable access and use policy in place to be considered eligible to receive infrastructure funding. As such, it's a fairly vital policy for us to hold. The public exhibition period received one submission, which had no impact on the policy itself, but congratulated council on taking the step of having a fair access and having inclusion as a policy position. There's not really anything else to note following the submission process, except to recommend that council notes the one submission was received regarding the draft fair access policy, adopts the fair access policy number 130 version 1, and signs and seals it this evening.
Moved by Councillor Nicholas. Someone to second. Councillor Prime, thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
A question, Ms Havercroft. In the issues section, it talks about Department of the Council promoting fair access frameworks, sporting clubs, groups, etc. I wondered if we have or any way of recognising whether we've made a difference. And I think they're sort of tied together. Is there an action plan, or are we building this into some of our other sporting action processes so that we can set some goals or record changes?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Yes, there is an action plan that's associated with this policy, and it has a broad range of actions that largely fall within the property and contracts team to undertake periodic review. So as the leases and licences are coming up and contracts are coming up for review, that this is included in there, particularly how are they going to demonstrate that they are actively encouraging women and girls and gender diverse individuals to take part in sport within the Alpine Shire. That's by no means the only action, but off the top of my head, I can't list them all. And that has a reporting mechanism. I can't answer the question specifically about how will we demonstrate that benefit. It's really on the clubs to be able to show us that they have taken the actions that we've requested.
Thanks. I think having the action plan in place will start to tell us whether it's working anyway. Thanks. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Prime.
No, nothing really to add. Great that this is there. Thanks for the congratulations from that one person from the community, and no, all good by me.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I think, again, this is one of those policy documents that I find absurd that we even have to document this in the first place, but I completely understand why, and emphasising, I suppose, that fundamental fairness that is required here and that we're already showing, but we're just documenting in order for us to be able to, I suppose, apply for grant funding to show that we show what we're already doing to be able to make that fair across the board. So I understand. I find it ludicrous that we have to document it to this point because I feel like we already do it so well, but I totally understand.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Anyone else to speak to this matter? Councillor Janus.
Just a comment on that. I think a local recent adaptation to that policy is the build of the Savoy Soccer Club, Mr Rees, where the female facilities there have been substantially upgraded in that new build with these type of things in mind. So that's a good practical example of what's occurring in our space.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Any other councillors to speak to this? Councillor Nicholas, any further comment from you? Okay, I'll put this recommendation to the vote. Can I have a show of hands for it? That's unanimous. Thank you. That rounds out our what did I say, quintuplet of policies, and I note the new draft governance rules would have prevented me from bundling them as one item for voting on should they be adopted in the future. 837, the quarterly performance report of a council plan. Ms Habercroft, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. The Alpine Shire Council Plan 21-25 was adopted by Council in October 21 and sets out Council's direction for the next 4 years. This quarterly performance report is the first update on progress in 23-24. I don't actually think it is. I think it's the third. I apologise. I might change that in the minutes. So it broadly is a report against how we're doing up until this point of the 31st of March and set against our strategic drivers. So our first strategic driver, for those who live and visit. Council launched the Business Hub on Engage Alpine, which is our engagement platform. As an online source of information for local chambers of commerce and businesses, Council also worked closely with the community organisations and groups following the severe storm event in Alpine Shire, sharing important emergency messaging with the community through these various groups and channels. Council's library branches in Bright, Mount Beauty and Myrtleford supported the Digital Listery for Seniors programmes as we do on an annual basis. There's lots of highlights, I'm just picking out a few this evening. Strategic Driver 2 is for a thriving economy. An estimated 78,605, I don't know how an estimate and an exact number, persons have attended events throughout the Alpine Shire in the first 3 quarters of 23-24. Strategic Driver 3 is for the bold protection of our future. Landfill capping works at Papunka are 80% completed, with the final completion due in May 2024. Myrtleford Landfill Rehabilitation Design was approved by the Environmental Protection Agency, and for many in those teams, they might say, finally, it's taken a long time to get to that position. Strategic Driver 4 for the enjoyment and opportunities of our lifestyle. A neighbourhood character strategy has commenced for all 4 major service towns in the Alpine Shire. A really big piece of strategic work is currently underway. Strategic Driver 5 for strong and informed leadership. Participation and member registrations for Engage Alpine grew significantly during the quarter, reaching 800 members and over 700 submissions. And we're undertaking most of our consultations through that platform now, and it's proving to be a very useful source of gathering and sharing information with our community. So the recommendation this evening to Council is that Council notes the quarterly performance report ending the 31st of March 2024.
So moved.
Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble. seconding. Councillor Nicholas, to you.
I always love these reports because you can see just how the Alpine Shire keeps goals against our council plan. So for those who've never watched a council meeting with the council quarterly report in it before, the council plan, as Severcroft said, is set at the beginning of a term, and we report with community, we work out what we want to achieve over the next 4 years. So this is showing what we're achieving against the council plan. And it's really exciting. Mr. Severcroft's already pointed out a number of things that are highlights. I think that the Engage platform and use of that's another highlight that wasn't really pulled out, and I'm really looking forward to even further maturement of our engagement process and perhaps doing some deliberative engagement online. The Youth Advisory Group, RAISE, that's been working brilliantly with council staff from my hearing, and they're reaching into the community, for example, working with the Brighton District Community through Chamber of Commerce recently, being part of and attending event and emergency management training, or at least introduction to, and so really starting to learn how to contribute well in the community. I'm looking forward to the next time they come to talk to us as well. The land development strategy is mentioned in the report. The neighbourhood character stuff that Ms Havercroft talked about is really important as to help us work into the future. So as rural land use investigations, which is coming up, and there's also some really big work. I won't talk about the future anymore. Other watch this space is the Murray Two Mountains upgrades that are mentioned in the full report, and it's not just upgrades to the trail, it's also installations of art pieces along the trail to increase interest. And then I do get accused of banging on about this, but my final thing is about climate action, and we've got some people talking, working with the community to identify community greenhouse gas baseline, emission baseline, so that then the council, which is best placed as a government to work with our communities for change. So we can then start working with our communities, knowing where we are and how we can improve so that we don't emit quite so much greenhouse gas, or hopefully none in the future. So that's just some of the things that Ms Havercroft hasn't already spoken about from that report, and I could talk about it really. So congratulations to all the staff who make this happen, and I really appreciate all the input that we get from our communities to make this happen too.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Acting Mayor Kelly. Councillor Nicholas, I can concur with all what you're saying there. It's really important, and I will say that this is the penultimate report for this council of 4 years. It's nearly been 4 years, everyone. We have one more report that will come before the elections for the next council. My question is, we look back on the last, 3.5 years of those council reports. It would be good to have a report of the last one, whether that's September or October ordinary council meeting, and to look back and have a look at if we have achieved everything in the council, draft plan that we set out to do 4 years ago. That would be good to have that conversation at that next meeting when we look at that. Thanks.
We'll take that as a feedback item or suggestion from Councillor Keeble at this point. Okay. Would anyone else, any other councillors to speak to this item? If not, back to Councillor Nicholas.
Yeah. I agree with Councillor Keeble. I just wanted to remind everybody that the plan actually goes into 2025, so it probably won't be finished, but we can just see how far we've got.
Thank you for the clarification, Councillor Nicholas. With no further comments, I'll put the recommendation to vote. All those in support of the recommendation? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item 9 now, and that is the informal meeting of councillors. A summary there before us. Have I got someone to move that? Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Prime seconding. All those in support of the recommendation? That's unanimous, thank you. Item 10 tonight is presentation of reports by delegates, and I'll start with my left, or for any reports.
No, I couldn't get on to the Teams meeting for my meeting, North East Waste Group.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. On my right, any committees or... Thank you, Councillor Janus.
Thank you. The 1st of May, I went to the Alpine Resilience Partnership meeting. It was held in Myrtleford with a number of different agencies and council staff being present on that. A couple of takeaways from that is that there was discussion in relation to domestic violence, which we all know is very prevalent at the moment, and the repercussions from that, and how we perhaps develop some sort of plan to get the word out, get the message out to the public about that. And I think by reading the papers you read enough about that. Also, that was noted that the Youth Awards are currently out for nomination, and I would recommend that people, if they've got somebody, to get into that early. I think it closes in June sometime. The one thing I was really impressed with is that our youth team were providing training for young people, on a white card program. And so that's if you want to enter a building site or some sort of construction area, you can't get in there unless you've got the appropriate OH&S training, and I think at the lowest level is a white card. So that's helping those people, you know, who might not want to be a brain surgeon, but they're going to be a really good tradesperson to get that first-hand experience. So that's a great initiative for that. The other meeting I went to was the Audit and Risk Committee on the 17th of Finance Committee on the Monday, Audit and Risk Committee on the 17th, and I'll speak to that when the minutes are released next week, I think. So that'll be for the next council meeting.
Terrific. Thank you, Councillor Janus. Any on my screen to speak to any items on reports by delegates? Councillor Keeble?
Oh, no, sorry.
No. Just one item from me on reports by delegates. I attended the Municipal Association of Victoria's State Council on the 17th of May. There's probably three quick reflections there. The first one being just the Welcome to Country and the context in that Welcome to Country was done really the local Indigenous leader really challenging the councillors and those present to think forward after the referendum to what's next and how do we progress moving forward as a community. The second item I would say, and it sort of leads into the third, is that in terms of the motions that were at the council, a running theme for me was very much the hardship issue, and in conversation with other councillors and CEOs, many councils are starting to see hardship issues really take escalation in terms of days outstanding on rates or other areas. We don't really have parking meters or traffic fines and things, but certainly other councils do, and they can see hardship becoming a real topic in terms of payments in arrears. Most of the motions, or many of the motions, were sort of around that cost issue, and whether it be costs being pushed down by the state government onto councils to manage various services and activities. I think a good example there, and one that we, Alpine Shires, are quite supportive of, is that those local airports, and a terrific asset to the community, but can be quite costly to operate and maintain and keep to the right standards. And the other item there, you know, in terms of housing pressure and all councils working to accommodate growth, there was a really interesting stat tabled by MAB that somewhere in the order of 2 to 5 planning scheme amendments are sitting with the Minister per council at the moment. So many councils working hard on planning scheme amendments to accommodate growth and population, but there is a real challenge in getting those amendments through the Minister for Planning. I'll move on to agenda item 11, and that is general business. And I'll start on the screen. I think Councillor Keeble, general business.
Thanks, Acting Mayor Kelly. First off, congratulations on chairing the meeting tonight. Great job. Thank you. I wanted to point out that between this ordinary council meeting and the June ordinary council meeting is the King's Long Weekend, and just that there will obviously be an influx of tourism and people into our shire, and for all of us to be cognizant of that fact. And I wish everyone the best in the opening of the ski season, which leads me to the part that yesterday the Bogon High Plains Road became 2 lanes for the first time since October 2022. And my thanks to Whelan's and MRPV for all their hard work. It's been a long road to get that road cleared and opened, and I'm sure everyone in the Kiewa Valley are looking forward to having more traffic lights on that road going to work and back, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, just a shout out to everyone. It's been a long haul, and thank you to everyone who's played their part. There's too many to name, actually. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of things from me. First of all, topic of conversation tonight, the community event grant funding is open, with discussions around, people coming with ideas and things like that. I think it's a really important time for you guys to be thinking about what it is that you have on the go. If you're not good at grant funding applications, it's definitely worth asking the question on whether there's assistance involved or someone who may have done it before. But this is the time to really jump in there and have a look at what it is that we want to do for our community, because it's really heartwarming to be able to look at these and fund them along the way. So just a reminder that I think is until mid-June. So get those applications in. As Councillor Janice, I think it was mentioned in his delegate report earlier, is that the Alpine Shire Youth Awards are open. Yes, it is very important that we have a look at what this looks like for the youth of today. I've been involved with this in many, many cases and absolutely love it. And it's really inspiring to see the applicants, the process and what it is that this can actually deliver for them as well. But I also want to make it very important that we make sure that we are putting in good applications and really looking at what they are, because this is all being read behind the scenes from the panels, I suppose, that are assessing them. And if the application doesn't have a bold structure, it can put that out a little bit in terms of what's being assessed. So really have a look at the information that is being put into these applications and take the time. If you're not strong at applications, try to buddy up with someone that might be to be able to support what that looks like. And the other thing too is, and it has been mentioned tonight, is that this is the year of the, this term finishing and the election phase going back into or out there to people who might be interested in putting their hands up. And we are already at the end of May, which really baffles me where this year has already gone, but really putting it out there to everybody that get your answers to your questions. Approach the current councillors with anything that you might have in terms of, the length involved, what it is that we do. I know that, when I put my hand up for council and jumping into it were two very different things. And there were a lot of things that I went, whoa, didn't consider these types of things. So I think being really rounded in the information that you're supplying yourself when considering something like this, or even putting it out there to somebody that you know is a really good pillar in our community that you feel might be a really good representation, and really questioning, because sometimes it just takes that, I suppose, I don't know the right word for it, but the faith that you have in the people around you in your community that do put their hand up a lot, it can really be very grounding and uplifting for somebody to be tapped on the shoulder and go, hey, I think that this would be really good for you. And that might be all it is, for someone to be able to put their hand up and you go, you know what, I might give this a go. So just to start those thought processes and conversations amongst yourselves and your families. You know, a lot of the time it is a decision of families. I know it was for me. It wasn't just a solo decision. So it's really now is the time to start getting those questions answered and thinking about what that might look like for you if you were to be running and elected for those next 4 years.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Janus.
Nothing.
Thank you, Councillor Prime.
No, nothing from me.
Councillor Nicholas.
Well, most of what I wanted to say has already been said. Youth Awards, absolutely, and put together a good application. And I've already had a few conversations with people, as Councillor Hughes has talked about, for potential for standing as councillors. So absolutely, we're all open to having a talk to people, and the sooner the better. So ring my number. But I also have a question. Given that there isn't any snow on the ground yet and it's still pretty warm, it could change almost immediately, but how's the snow factory going that's supposed to be coming to Dinner Plain? Thank you, Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Unfortunately, the snow factory won't be able to be installed prior to this winter season. It is still in delivery mode. However, the reticulation services of pipe work and so on is in the final stages of being completed. So we've been working with the Dinner Plain Community Association, keeping them in the loop, and we'll be installing all of that infrastructure in terms of snow guns and snow factory in the season after the snow completes the season. And the main reason is just the safety of lifting equipment like that around in those conditions.
Thank you. Good to get an update. And the other question I have is around the platypus mural, which is terrific. But I just wondered if there's any interpretation intended. Is anybody here who can answer that question? I've been asked it by a community member, so I'll follow up later. Thanks.
I'll take it on notice, Councillor Nicholas.
That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholas. Just one item from me tonight. I thought, given the information around hardship that is emerging, Ms Havercroft, do you have an update on our payments in arrears and how that's tracking for Alpine Shire?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Yep, so I've got some information from the 20th of May. So at the 20th of May, we had 927 rates notices that had an overdue amount sitting on them, which is 500 less than the same period, so May 2023. We haven't done any detailed analysis as to what that might be, but this year we've introduced a range of different payment methods, which we think has made it much easier for people to make payments in their time frame. So before interest starts to accrue, they become overdate, they're paying through Apple Pay or Google Pay or FlexiPay, not necessarily waiting for their rates notices to appear. 12 of those 927 are above $10,000, so quite significant sums of overdue, but that's matched, I suppose, with nearly 1,000 that sit at just below $1,000. So they measure each other out. Of that 927, 19 of those have time to pay arrangements, which is open to people who are struggling to make those payments and are seeking further time to pay. And was recently introduced as part of Victorian Government's changes to how we have to offer time to pay arrangements and how we can charge interest on those rates. But unfortunately, 78 of the 927 are currently sitting with our outsourced debt collection agency. So they've been sitting in arrears for a significant amount of time. We've seen no change in the number of hardship claims, so through our financial hardship policy that are coming through. So I'm unable to comment on whether that's getting any different for our community, but just remind the community that those options are available to them to make a submission into council for us to consider their financial hardship when considering the payments of rates.
Terrific. Thank you, Ms Havercroft. And just lastly, on general business, Mr Jeremy, any items from you tonight?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've just got a couple of quick ones. We've got a number of documents out for public exhibition at the moment, and following the meeting tonight we'll have a number more. So we're keen for people where they're comfortable to do so to use our online platform, Alpine Engage, and we're getting some really good feedback through that platform. However, I just want to make it clear, we will accept written feedback in any form which the community is comfortable to provide it. So via email to info@ or in hard paper, written and handed in at our council offices or our libraries. So I just want to make that clear that we're not excluding people from providing feedback in writing. The second one I've got, this follows on from the conversation about the upcoming council election. There is an event in Wangaratta, so in the Performing Arts Centre on June the 13th in the evening, and that is called Stand for Council. It's being run by the Municipal Association of Victoria, and it's intended for prospective councillor candidates to learn all about what it means to be a councillor, what's the role of council, what does the electoral process look like, what are some campaign tips if they are keen to get their name up to run for council. So I'd encourage people to attend the meeting if they can. It will be recorded, I understand, because I realise Wangaratta is not within the Alpine Shire, so we'll make it available into the Alpine Shire, but if you can make it out to Wangaratta and you're keen, it'll be a good evening. I understand it's not confirmed yet, but the 22nd of July, there's likely to be a follow-up session in Wodonga, so perhaps more convenient for residents of the Kiewa Valley. So yeah, if you're a prospective candidate and you want to learn a bit more about it, there's 2 opportunities there for you to come along and learn. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Jeremy. I'll move on to item 12, motions for which notice has previously been given. There are none tonight. Reception and reading of petitions. I don't believe we've received any petitions. Nope. Okay. And finally, item 14, documents for sealing. There's six items for sealing tonight, including some of the, at least 2 of the policies, 3 of the policies that we reflected on. Can I have a mover and seconder for those, please? Or are there any questions before I put that out?
No question. You're questioning or moving?
You're moving? Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Janus, Councillor Nicholas seconding. Can I have a vote on all of those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Well, being no further business, I'll declare the meeting closed tonight at 7:13 p.m. and thank you for putting up with the owl plater. Have a good